Blue Eye Samurai is a very good show. Like, really very good. Like, incredibly very good. It's one of the best things I've ever seen. I named Blue Eye Samurai my favorite show of 2023, and that was with the competition of both Fiona and Cake and Scavenger's Reign, two shows that I would also say are incredibly good. But despite the quality of these two other shows, Blue Eye Samurai is far ahead of them in my mind, and for a long time I couldn't really piece together why. There were a lot of obvious things about Blue Eye Samurai that jumped out to me first, like the great animation, the fantastic action sequences, and the simple and effective revenge story. And while I love all three of these aspects of Blue Eye Samurai, while writing the script for this video, I still felt like there was something missing. This show isn't just action, it isn't just beautiful animation, and it isn't just a satisfying revenge story. There's something more going on here, and I think I figured out what it is. There are three specific aspects when it comes to Blue Eye Samurai that I believe elevates it to the point of being a masterpiece. These three secrets are what Blue Eye Samurai uses to drive its story forward and make it far more memorable than anything I've seen in a very long time. Now, since this is a deep dive, we're gonna run into some spoilers. I'm gonna do my best to be vague in some areas, but I do really want to make my points clear, so be warned, there are spoilers for Blue Eye Samurai in this video, so if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out right now, and if you're okay with spoilers, I'll do my best to make sure there are still some big surprises for you when you watch the show. But with that being said, let's talk about Blue Eye Samurai. Motivation can be a tricky thing in storytelling. You can have a really cool idea for a story with big action scenes and crazy set pieces, but if the only reason a character is there is because they need to be for the story to happen, then all that buildup can feel like a real letdown. And while I love great action scenes and gawking in awe at elaborate, high-effort animation, what I really love is when characters have a good reason to be where they are. The driving force behind a character's decisions is integral in storytelling, otherwise the story could feel contrived, coincidental, or just plain stupid. But motivation for characters isn't just important for the structure of a story, it also plays a key role in immersing the audience. A character that makes decisions a real person would make is far more relatable than a character that chooses to do something that's cool just for the sake of it. And while there is a place in storytelling for things to be cool just for the hell of it, character motivation and drive just is not that place. It's all about balance. And Blue Eye Samurai understands this exceptionally well. Every main character in Blue Eye Samurai has a clear goal that evolves as the story evolves. We know what they want, where they're coming from, and why they're doing what they're doing. Mizu is seeking revenge, Taigen wants to reclaim his honor, Fowler wants power, Akemi wants control of her life, and Ringo just wants to be great at something. Regardless of how deep or broad each motivation is for each main character, they all have something that is driving their decisions. They have something they want and a reason to want it. And best of all, these goals evolve as the show progresses. It's a really simple concept, but it's one of the key reasons Blue Eye Samurai's story feels so satisfying to watch. There's a consistent buildup of motivation that drives the characters through the story and through their character arcs. Every episode of Blue Eye Samurai builds on the last, and by the end of the first season, every member of the main cast has grown in a satisfying way. I know it sounds really simple, but that's because it is that simple. There's nothing desperate about how Blue Eye Samurai presents its characters and their choices. The writers aren't trying to convince the audience of anything. They just let the story, characters, and world speak for themselves. There's so much confidence in the writing and presentation of Blue Eye Samurai, and you can only be that confident if you absolutely nail the basic fundamentals of storytelling. And while it's true that Blue Eye Samurai has incredible action and great animation, it would all feel completely empty without compelling characters with clear goals, strengths, and weaknesses. A cool action scene is cool, sure, But a cool action scene with actual character implications, story implications, and drive and motivation behind it, that's a whole lot cooler. The pace of Blue Eye Samurai is non-stop. In 8 episodes, there is so much action, so much style, so many intriguing conversations and flashbacks and tits and penises galore. The show just moves at such a consistent and fast pace that sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. In the first episode, we see Mizu take on Taigen, and then after that altercation, the Four Fangs are sent to kill Mizu. Then, by the end of the next episode, the Four Fangs are dead, and Taigen has found his way to Mizu. Not a single second of Blue Eye Samurai is wasted. They could have drug out the Four Fangs for a few episodes. Maybe they're the main villain of this first season. Nope, they're just a tool to develop Mizu's character further and to establish that, yes, she's a very skilled warrior, but she also has weaknesses. From start to finish, Blue Eye Samurai is moving forward and not looking back, regardless of how cool the last action sequence was, or how interesting a set of enemy characters are, or if there's a new antagonist or a new piece of the world that we want to see. It's only gonna be there for as long as it needs to be, and then it's gone, because you know what? We've got other stuff to do. And there's no better example of this super fast and effective pacing than in the episode where Mizu is fighting off scores and scores of enemies while simultaneously having a flashback that explains the depths of her character. The Tale of the Ronin and the Bride is one of the best paced episodes of a TV show I have ever seen. Period. Forget about adult animation. This is one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. Not only is this episode filled with high quality action and animation, but it tells a devastating story at the same time. Blue Eye Samurai has a lot of moving pieces when it comes to its story. Balancing this cast of characters that is incredibly well defined is not an easy feat. Chances are someone is not going to get the screen time that they need to feel fully fleshed out by the end of the season, and I was especially worried about Ringo and Taigen's development when I first watched Blue Eye Samurai. Ringo and Taigen's arcs are a good bit more low stakes than Akemi's or Mizu's, but by the end of Blue Eye Samurai, Ringo and Taigen have a fundamental place in the climax just like Akemi and Mizu, and that wouldn't have felt as satisfying if the pace wasn't so perfect throughout. Everyone gets enough time to explain what they need to do, where they need to go, all their motivations. We get to see it, we have it explained, but it doesn't dwell for so long that the show starts to slow down. Everything is just perfectly paced. The motivation all makes sense, and the fact that it's clipping by consistently means that it doesn't feel like we're getting information dumped on us while we're watching Blue Eye Samurai. It just feels like you're watching it. It really is just that simple. It doesn't feel like effort. It doesn't feel like the writers are trying too hard or the animators are trying too hard. Everyone feels like they're trying the perfect amount. It's a weird feeling. It's a weird thing to try to describe, but Blue Eye Samurai to me, having watched it twice now, in terms of pacing, I have zero issues. I don't think this show slows down even for a second. It just keeps going. And all you can do as an audience member is sit back and watch. Now, I did a lot of research, thinking, rewatching, rewriting, all sorts of stuff to try to figure out what the third piece of the Blue Eye Samurai puzzle was. What's the third ingredient in the secret sauce that makes this show so good? And after looking at it for a while, I think the third and final piece is Mizu as a character, as a protagonist. Mizu is a perfect example of a flawed but relatable protagonist. She's a violent, angry person who solves most of her problems through violence, but by the end of the first season, she's forced to restrain herself. It's a nice, simple character arc that works for Mizu's character, sure, but what I really love about Mizu in Blue Eye Samurai is that she has to pay the price for revenge. Despite the fact that some view her as a violent demon, Mizu is, in fact, very human. She was made an outcast for something completely out of her control, and she feels like the only way she can seize control of her destiny is by taking revenge. Mizu doesn't care if she lives or dies so long as she's pursuing revenge, because that's all that matters to her now. She's nothing without this hatred that's driving her. Mizu makes friends and helps people during her journey, but her end goal is just revenge and nothing else. Now, the price of revenge is a concept that's been explored in a lot of different stories. My main background when it comes to revenge stories, or my main source of knowledge, I guess you could call it, is The Last of Us Part 2, because my first ever big professional video editing project was editing a 5-hour-long critique on the story of that game for my brother Luke, who I still work for today. Now don't worry, we're not going to dive deep into the story of The Last of Us Part 2 or anything like that, but I wanted to bring it up because, for one, I know that story inside and out. I know the story of The Last of Us Part 2 like the back of my hand. I have seen so much footage from that goddamn game, I could probably recite it. However, I feel like the price of revenge in that game is conveyed incredibly well. You might not like it, it might be controversial, but the fact is the price of revenge is almost always more than what the actual driving force behind your need for revenge is. In the case of Mizu, what happened to her was completely out of her control, and yet she's doing whatever she can to make herself feel better about it, despite the fact that there's nothing that can logically be done. And that little tidbit right there is why I'm bringing up The Last of Us Part 2, because The Last of Us Part 2's approach to revenge was somewhat coincidental and contrived to get to the point where you could tell this revenge story. But in Blue Eye Samuai, I feel like conceptually, as a revenge story, having the person seeking revenge being driven by something that they literally cannot control, even if they had all the power that's feasibly possible in the world, they cannot change what they are angry about. That is a concept, that is an approach to a revenge story that I think is just perfect. It's like a control test in a vacuum. There's something just right about it. Now, the message in most revenge stories tends to be revenge is bad, which makes sense. Seeking out revenge, seeking payback, that never really does make you feel better because it doesn't actually change what happened. Whatever caused you to seek out revenge still happened, and you inflicting the same amount of pain on the person that inflicted that pain on you just brings more pain into the world. It doesn't actually take any out. Mizu is constantly suffering in her pursuit for revenge. She's getting cut up, she's getting knocked out, she's getting thrown around. She is physically and mentally paying the price of revenge, and by the end of this first season, she doesn't even realize that she's pretty much already paid the ultimate price of revenge. Accompanied by Fowler, because she can't kill him, otherwise she would lose out on killing the other 2 men who turned her into a monster, she sets off for London, completely alone without any of the friends she made on this long journey. All Mizu has to show for her pursuit of revenge is a bunch of cuts and bruises and a vague lead on where she needs to go next. Mizu is completely alone and just as angry as she was before. And that is the real price of revenge. Now, I've talked about my 3 big reasons why Blue Eye Samurai is so great. I talked about motivation, I talked about the pacing, and I talked about Mizu as a character and the message behind the show when it comes to revenge. But frankly, there's a lot more to this show than just great characters and a great story. The animation and action in Blue Eye Samurai is incredible. There are these beautiful shots that I would happily frame and put up on my walls that in a split second become the most brutal and chaotic thing you've ever seen, and you're just left in awe. The violence and action feels realistic and grounded, but it's stylized in a way that makes you forget just how brutal this show can be at times. The characters feel real, the violence feels real, the world feels real, but the presentation in terms of editing, cinematography, direction, and choreography feels like a comic book that's been brought to life. The action and the presentation is the only thing that feels over the top, and it helps the show feel effortlessly cool and cinematic. Blue Eye Samurai is beautiful and brutal. Its characters are well thought out and relatable, and its story is simple and effective. It's rare for a show to blow me away so much in its first season, but Blue Eye Samurai earns every bit of praise I can give it. And I'm sure some of you who haven't seen the show are thinking, there's no way it can be that good, can it? Oh yeah, Blue Eye Samurai really is that good. But that's gonna do it for this video, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all the support recently. It really does mean a lot. This year will be the first year I am attending PAX East alongside my brother Luke, who I work for. I mentioned it earlier in the video. I'm a video editor for him. So we're going together to PAX, and it's gonna be a jolly old time. So if you're gonna be there too, don't be shy to come on over and say hi. God knows I'll be fumbling around like a moron across whatever the hell PAX is, so there'll be that, I guess. But this year's off to a great start. It's off to a fun start. I like the content I'm making. I like the shows that have been coming out. It's just a fun, great year so far, and a lot of that is thanks to all of you. So hey, treat yourself tonight. Go get a tasty brew and a tasty snack and watch some Blue Eye Samurai and vibe. That's all I got. Like and subscribe to become a cow. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.